Welcome back to Sunday Vibes 1 and all. We're back in the Phoenix pub on Oxford Circus. Look who has joined me. It's Christopher Hamill. It's Patrick Van Straten. How are we, gentlemen?
Good. Mm-hmm. I'm feeling very composed.
Composed?
I've had a coffee. I'm feeling level-headed.
Nice.
I'm feeling good to go.
got there eventually. How are you feeling?
I'm good. Did you not get the Earth Tones memo?
No, I appear to have missed out and I'm quite disappointed.
We're dressed as different kinds of latte.
Yeah.
You are not.
Steve Irwin vibes going on.
You're dressed as a concrete milkshake.
Yeah.
Legend.
Absolutely. Today we're going to be talking about some Wonderkids in the Premier League. Couldn't think of a good segue from concrete milkshakes to Wonderkids, I'm not going to lie, this week. So we are going to be talking about
who has
players.
concrete futures? Does that work? Who is...
Let's say yes.
It's a bit clunky, but nevertheless,
no, it doesn't matter,
basically we're going to be talking about young players that deserve or potentially deserve more of a chance in the first team going forward this season. We've got some of our own suggestions, we've got some of your suggestions at home that you sent in to go through. Who do you want to start with, lads?
Should we start with Alejandro
Garnacho.
And this is good timing because he did score your winning goal against Sociedad last night. Should we talk about
Shame that game, though.
His time on the pitch before we, bring the colour, bring a bit of background, because I am keen to hear what you thought, watching him take on the likes of La Real.
Yeah, well, it's nice to see him get a run in the first team, or at least get some minutes in the first team, because he's certainly been coming to a level, hasn't he? Given that he won the Young Player of the Year award, he was starting to feature in squads last season, wasn't he? And then he had a bit of a step back in pre-season, let's put it that way, with some of the attitude problems that Erik ten Hag and Bruno Fernandes, particularly Bruno last night, spoke about, him turning up late to training and things like that. And,
really? Interesting, one of them.
And being disciplined for it and not getting the minutes he should have got. And he seems to have turned his attitude around and changed his attitude a little bit. And Erik ten Hag has obviously given him minutes because of that. And he's incredibly talented. Like, each time he plays in the Europa League, we've seen so far this season, admittedly, last night was definitely the best opposition he's faced. I think the game before was Sharif at home, which, the opposition calibre-wise, not exceptional, but still, he's the type of player who just can go past 3 or 4 players in an instant, works extremely hard off the ball as well, playing out that left-hand side, where I think there is a space at Manchester United at the moment, potentially, given that Jadon Sancho's form has dipped quite dramatically, and Marcus Rashford might end up going through the middle a little bit more. And then last night against Real Sociedad, he was definitely Man United's most dangerous attacker. I thought United actually got worse when he came off the pitch. Obviously scored a great goal, great first touch, great second touch, and the finish is just outrageous. Very two-footed.
That was his weaker foot as well, right? Because he's right-footed.
But he is very two-footed. And anybody who watched Man United's FA Youth Cup run last year, not that many people would have done.
Well, apparently Erik ten Hag did when he was in Holland. Apparently he subscribed to MUTV just so he could watch Garnacho. What a lovely little anecdote. No, I'm going to believe it. I'm going to believe it.
It's possible. But he is quite two-footed, and also he's a really competent finisher. In the youth setups, although he was played wide at times, he was also played through the middle at times, and took some of his chances last year unbelievably. Scored a couple of banger free kicks as well. He's extremely talented.
Well, just elaborating on what you're saying there, 14 goals and 6 assists for the under-23s last year. Quite interesting
at
for
17
a winger
as well.
Yeah, for a winger that he's clearly more like, decisive in front of goal than he is at creating opportunities.
Yeah, he's a little bit more of like wants to get in the box and shoot more than he does want to create, like maybe a Jadon Sancho wants to do. But he's so explosive pace-wise. He's definitely going to get more minutes for Manchester United this season. I do think that his attitude, as long as it keeps improving, you don't want that to become the sort of thing that holds you back. And I think he's out of contract in the summer as well, which is a bit of a problem potentially for Erik ten Hag. If he starts to perform really well, then he might be saying, I want
Got
X.
the club by the balls,
exactly.
mate.
And if he doesn't perform very well and doesn't get minutes, then he might say, I'm going to be leaving, a little bit akin to Xavi Simons at PSG, went to PSV and is now looking like a sensation, isn't he? So, yeah, I think Alejandro Garnacho is perfect for this question, and I do think he'll get more minutes going forward this season.
Yeah, that contract situation is very sticky, isn't it? Because there's a club in London who play in blue who will pay 19-year-olds £100,000 a week if they think it is worth a while. I mean, how has this happened? How has such an attacking talent, come from the Atletico Madrid youth setup?
Got United robbed just before Brexit, wasn't it? When everybody was going out and stealing players from Spain,
Yeah.
Brazil and stuff.
And you did well to fend off competition from, I think it's Borussia Dortmund,
he was extremely highly rated.
And Real Madrid. But, I mean, in the last 2 or 3 years, United have been generally good at, blooding these good young wide talents into the team. Elanga, obviously, Rashford going a little bit further back. So, I mean, do you think it's feasible that he gets a good amount of minutes in the second half of the season?
Yeah, definitely.
Is there a conversation to be had around, Jadon Sancho dropping to the bench? What was it, 3 goals and assists in 10 Premier League starts? Or are people overplaying his downturn in form?
I think Manchester United have a huge problem in forward areas scoring goals at the moment. I think defensively are looking very, very solid. Obviously, we know I think it's over 8 hours now since United last conceded a goal at home. 9 games unbeaten since that Manchester City hammering, and that's kind of all been built on the back of 1-0s. 2-0s. So going forward is where the issue lies. Obviously, it was highlighted again against Sociedad midweek when needed to win the game 2-0, couldn't really create a chance in the second half to win that game. And that's where I think Garnacho is a bit of a difference maker. I don't necessarily think he'll be starting a lot of games, but when it is at 1-1, if it's a 0-0 in the second half of the Premier League season, he's a huge impact player who can come on and with a little bit of footwork, with his pace, just something different can change a game very, very quickly. And I think that's maybe where Jadon Sancho isn't in the same boat. I think Jadon Sancho is slightly more consistent, obviously, given his age, but I don't think he's got that game-changing factor to bring off the bench. So I think Garnacho will get probably more minutes from the bench. I think Jadon Sancho is still going to start a lot of games, but United's front line's thin. Rashford, Garnacho, Antony, Sancho are probably competing for those spots, aren't they? And then there's one striker, really, Ronaldo, because Martial's never fit, so then Rashford has to play through the middle, so then it's really just, Garnacho's going to play out on the left, Sancho and Antony for 2 spots. With that many games, he's definitely going to get minutes.
Like an increased amount of confidence in him and his ability to make an impact from the bench, we'll see United sort of maybe not shop around in January?
United aren't going to go for another winger. I don't think United need another winger. United just need a striker. United need a striker really badly at this stage.
It shouldn't have any great bearing on.
I don't think that's going to have a massive bearing on Garnacho's future. He's obviously happy at the moment. You'd imagine he's playing with as he keeps talking about his idol in Cristiano Ronaldo. We saw it last night. It was quite a cute moment, wasn't it, when Garnacho asked him, "Can I do your celebration?" And Ronaldo was like, "Yeah, go on, do my celebration." And he went and did it. It's like, for a 17-year-old lad to be playing with the player that he's idolised his whole career, it's probably a big moment for him. And given the fact he also, was called up to the Argentina national side at 17 in the 33. Did he make the 33?
He got to the final 33 in the last World Cup qualifiers and then got cut
given
after
that he never really had been.
Well, they clearly want to give him
club level at that
the experience,
stage.
Don't they, around the squad?
Yeah, and he's playing with Messi and players like that at that level as well. I think his pedigree is extremely clear. Argentina aren't doing that with many 17, 18-year-old lads who haven't got a single game at first team level. So I expect Garnacho to have considerable minutes for the second half of the season as an impact sub.
Yeah, he's appeared once in the Premier League this season, hasn't he? I think off the bench.
As a sub, and then he started 2 Europa League games.
Yeah.
First goal last night. Yeah.
4 in total, though. No, I think that's a good place to start. I think he's a really exciting talent, but we should probably move on further down the road, maybe to Omari Hutchinson. Don't know what your opinion is of him, given that he obviously left Arsenal in the summer window for £3 million. It was pretty contentious. Like, a lot of Arsenal fans were very disappointed with the move, but was it understandable from his perspective? Because I've read recently that when Arsenal bought Marquinhos in from Sao Paulo, was it, for around £3 million, he went straight into the first team when they took on Nuremberg in a pre-season friendly, and Arteta left Hutchinson at home. I think they ended up playing Woking, whatever development squad was sort of left, and apparently that made him sit there, ponder, reflect, and just think, maybe I am behind Saka, Pepe, who wasn't on loan at that point, Marquinhos, who else can play on the right? Reece Nelson now. Gabriel Jesus can play on the right as well. So I guess him maybe pushing for a move, I can see it.
I think it makes sense for him, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure I really believe the Marquinhos thing, because when Marquinhos arrived, Arteta was quite clear that he was like, we're going to have a look at him, but we expect him to go on loan, and he kind of changed his mind as time went on. But And I wouldn't say they play in exactly the same way. Marquinhos, I think, is much more of a straight-up winger than Omari Hutchinson is.
Yeah, but plays cam as well, doesn't he, Omari Hutchinson?
Yeah, and when you think about the clips you've seen of Omari Hutchinson, it's him picking the ball up deep, driving on, beating guys. it's a bit of a loss for Arsenal, but it's not a loss that Arsenal be that bothered about because, as you say, they're fairly strong in these positions.
Areas, yeah.
They've also got, the kind of jewel of their academy at the moment is probably Charlie Patino.
I like that he's so slight, but he's like a DM / central midfielder.
Well, he never was. But I mean, we can come back to him. Omari, it's a little bit of a loss for Arsenal, but I think Chelsea right now, there's a really good pipeline to the first team. To go back to what you said about Man United, I actually disagree. I don't think Man United have done a good job blooding players at all, and that might be because it's a bad period. But the only one they've blooded is Elanga in the last couple of years.
Well, I suppose
and the only one who's made their way into the squad properly is McTominay over the last 5 years. A few years ago, I was going to say
Brandon Williams
didn't work. Yeah,
Brandon Williams, I think, put up over 1,000 Premier League minutes in the season that Garnacho agreed to join Manchester United. There obviously was Mason Greenwood as well. I think Marcus Rashford would have just registered over 2,000 minutes for the first time in his career. So maybe not now in hindsight, but certainly then Manchester United looked like a club who were willing to give young players.
And United had a problem with their academy where they weren't actually producing massively high quality players out of the academy. There was very much an underfunded period.
That's kind of my point though. Like, I mean, Rashford broke through in about 2015-16. That was when he started playing under Van Gaal. That's a long time ago now. Since then, the only player from the academy who's become a first team regular is McTominay. Henderson has obviously gone, or is going in the kind of process of making his way out of the club. And when you look at the way that, particularly right now, Liverpool, Chelsea and Arsenal have managed to fill holes in their first team using the academy.
City.
This does feel a way that United can start to recover some ground on those people around them, especially because of Ten Hag's track record in this regard.
United did look in better shape a couple of years ago, though, just to reiterate. Remember Jose Mourinho, that stat of him playing significantly more like academy minutes than the likes of Klopp, Pep.
United do have some amazing academy records. I think it's 4,000 consecutive games has been an academy player. Over 4,000 consecutive games has been an academy player in the United.
So I can see why Garnacho.
But I agree. I think
they tend to be the same players, though. I mean, like it's not
quite.
There aren't as many. There aren't as many coming through right now. Certainly not. So I think Chelsea currently probably seems like it has the best pipeline to the first team of any major club in the country. It's got a manager who's clearly willing to try different things out. I don't know how it will fit if they continue. Well, I don't know. Graham Potter, I think, is willing to change his formation, change his style based on the talent available to him. So from that point of view, I think it makes sense as well.
Do you think that's a bit of a hindrance to the current Chelsea, though? Because I feel like he's tinkering maybe a little bit too much, and there's some odd decisions being made. We've spoken about in the past, haven't we? Sterling playing at wing back, Pulisic at wing back, forward about 3 at the back, and he's making a lot of sort of early changes.
This feels like a very natural time to do that, though, doesn't it?
It does. It does. But do you think that will allow more academy players or less academy players into that team? Because
if the results are bad, then fewer. Whenever the results are bad, you go back to the people who are, tested. You go to consistent talent. But I think Chelsea are going to be fine. They've got way more talent than most of the clubs around them. And Potter's a really good coach who, though he's early on in his tenure there, is taking over from a manager who actually aligns pretty well with the kind of football that Potter wants to play. I think he'll probably get a shot. I don't know how soon it'll be. He's likely to need a loan, you'd imagine. But they're not absolute. If he was going to play attacking midfield, they're not absolutely stacked in proper attacking midfielders.
I kind of agree.
They've got guys who can do it, but not really, except for Mount. Mount's the only one who you'd really want playing there consistently.
And I suppose Gallagher might be thinking to himself, I want to play there. But whether or not he's going to.
I don't think
those sort of like two floating eights. Yeah, he can play as that attacking midfielder in a more central area.
Yeah, and Hudson-Odoi can play there, and Havertz can play in the hole, but I'm not sure that these are guys that you'd want to pin a Premier League season on.
But Chukwuemenka's going to want to play in that sort of
I don't really know much about him.
We can move on to him next because I've got a big old breakdown of him, and he does look like a sensational talent. But yeah, Hutchinson, good to see that he was included in the Chelsea squad for the recent Brighton game. Like, he was on the bench, so clearly he's kind of forced his way into Potter's thinking.
It's a shame he wasn't able to be included in the Champions League squad as well, because I do think midweek, in that sort of dead rubber where I think Potter played a surprisingly strong team, and it's kind of backfired a little bit with Chilwell picking up hamstring injury and out for a few months. But I think he would have been getting a couple of minutes there, potentially.
Match week 6 of the Champions League is normally right for that sort of stuff, isn't it?
But this year it might be early January. There might be players coming back from the World Cup who are a little bit leggy, and coaches are reliant on their squads, their academies a little bit more. Potter is one of the managers who I think would not complain about it. You know, like you can imagine Conte doing it with very bad grace.
Yeah, definitely.
I think Potter will say, okay, this is a chance to see what these guys can do. Chelsea have invested, as we're about to see with Carney, they've invested a huge amount of money in these guys.
They really have.
You know, because when you think about Omari, okay, he's a great talent, but the amount of money to pay for him for a guy who's never played a first team game really is pretty astonishing. So I think that Potter will say, okay, what can we produce with these guys? And I wouldn't be surprised if over the back half of the season you see quite a few players make their debut.
Yeah, I think what Potter's always been really good at is he's never rushed prodigious young talents into the starting lineup, has he? But when they sort of reach between 20 and 22, he entrusts them with a lot of minutes, and we've seen that from the likes of, I don't know, Ben White, McAllister, Alzate, Roberto Sanchez. I mean, trusting a goalkeeper at 21 takes an awful lot of guts, actually. Moises Caicedo.
Ben White was a great example of how well he bedded him in, bringing him out, sending him out alone, bringing him back, and then working him into that position.
I mean, he's got a really good track record. I think the only exceptions are probably Caicedo and Tariq Lamptey, right? Yeah. Who he's sort of put into the team at 19,
and
20.
I think, look at his faith in, Trevor Chalobah coming through the academy. Subsequently to that Fofana injury, he's been so vital and to that Potter side. And I think that a lot of other managers probably wouldn't have given Chalobah so much faith in that position, given some of the names that have been available. They might have played, as Palaqueta as that sort of inside centre back, in a back three, or like to stick with Chalobah. There's a lot of academy players in that setup. Chalobah, Reece James, Mason Mount, Conor Gallagher, all getting pretty consistent minutes at the moment. That I
it
totally
would be
agree.
Uplifting if you were a youngster, right?
I think Omari Hutchinson and Garnacho are in really good positions to get game time over the second half of the season.
Yeah, and it only takes an injury at the right time. Rashford ended up getting into that Van Gaal team because they had some injuries and they were thin up front. And Van Gaal said, okay, there's this kid in the academy who I kind of believe in. So if Mount were to get injured, especially given the fact that Chelsea are not exactly devastating in front of goal right now, then Hutchinson is just a step away, because Potter has to say, okay, are we going to go to something like a 4-3-3 and use Gallagher as an 8, do something like that? Or are we just going to go like for like and maybe see if this youngster can do it at the highest level?
And this wouldn't be throwing him in at the deep end either, because he's just excelled at every level he's played at, Omari Hutchinson, at the moment. I think it's 9 goals and assists in 11 Premier League 2 starts. In the Papa John's, he's been absolutely devastating. I was watching him destroy Leyton Orient last night. I think he got a goal and 2 assists when Chelsea's development side came back and beat their Leyton Orient senior team 3-2. So he looks not quite Premier League ready, but first team ready for sure. And he has that sort of like explosiveness, that physicality that gets you excited as a fan watching him. If that can translate to the Premier League, woof.
Yeah, he's got that sort of like ability, isn't he? Just to drift.
I almost said Eden Hazardy, but I didn't want to put that on it, put that on him at the moment. But
early doors. Should we talk about Carney then? Because that was a big move in the summer. That was a big fee for a player who is not played first team.
And he's in a great position. I mean, of all of them, he's in the best position, right? Because we've been saying
Chelsea's
midfield turnover is coming down the pipe for Chelsea, whether they like it or not. Perfect time for a guy to break through. So you can understand why they said we're going to spend a bit more money on a talent who we think is very special, because we're going to have a huge problem to solve in 2023.
Georgie, Kante.
I tweeted this morning, really. Kante has been out for what? He's missed 14 games now with that hamstring injury.
They're not going to give him a new contract.
Jorginho,
he might not go to the World Cup.
feels nailed on to go to Barcelona. They recruit him on a free. They've been interested in him in the last 2 windows.
So rumours are they want Conte, right?
Oh, right. Okay, so the Catalans probably take one of them.
Surely you don't touch Conte with a barge pole right now.
Barcelona. I'm pretty certain Mundo Deportivo said he's the chosen one to replace Busquets, and I was like, the chosen one is a 31-year-old injury prone and go to a Conte. Okay,
who's never played anything like Busquets in his entire career.
We love Kovacic. Kovacic has got time in his contract, but he still only started 4 games this season. Ruben Loftus, in the Premier League. Not all competitions. Ruben Loftus-Cheek has only started over 20
has been good though.
Premier League games twice in his whole career.
Has been good this season.
He has been good.
And going to be included on the 55-man squad.
But you wouldn't be surprised, is my point, if he got another big injury that kept him out for half a season. Like, he's not someone that you would, to use a phrase you referenced earlier, pin a whole Premier League season on.
Yeah, no.
It's almost like a bonus that he's playing well at the moment.
And he's a supplemental guy in your midfield, right? Ruben Loftus-Cheek doesn't make your midfield good, but your midfield can be good with Loftus-Cheek in it. But it's dependent on the players around him.
And that's a little nod to his intelligence as well, because he can play a number of roles. He's a bit of a Swiss Army knife, isn't he?
He's played at fullback as well.
And he's a massive guy who has incredibly good feet. And And, in the past, he's played on the wing. He's played kind of in the hole. He's played as a DM. He's played as a normal box-to-box 8.
And
that
gorgeous.
Intelligence is working. Yeah, he's really hot. Which is good for Chelsea because obviously ugly club, ugly fans.
You think Chukwuemeka? Do you think Chukwuemeka is going to play in a central midfield 2? Is he going to be better suited to a 3?
I got some interesting context from some fans on Twitter that are sort of engaging with, and they say he keeps coming on the left-hand side
of a 3.
Well, I think they're playing. At the minute, was it the 3-4-3? Yeah, so just the left-hand side of the middle of the park.
An interior.
In general, yeah. But, yeah, I don't see why he couldn't play as part of a... Do you know what? Like a double pivot or in a 4-3-3. Do you know what vibes he gives me when I watch highlights of him? Sort of Sergej Milinković-Savić / Pogba vibes. He's got that... He can play as a sort of 6 or 8, but stylistically at times can look like a 10, and that's what gets me really excited about young players when they just look like they're breezing through games.
Yeah.
And he just looks absolutely superb every time I've watched him.
So many teams wanted to sign him in the summer. I think he was close to joining Barcelona, wasn't he? Before he went to
I think
Chelsea.
it's 16 mil rising to 20, and Chelsea have given him, according to Capology, £100,000 a week. So. I mean, we know they don't mind doing that. They do. Hudson Odoi
might not be exactly
it
that.
didn't quite work out. Yeah, it might be less than that, ballpark. But that would say to me that
there's a lot of faith in that player.
The handover, in terms of him taking over that midfield, is imminent.
Yeah, and they're going to have to rebuild a whole midfield. Like, to lose Jorginho and Kante on frees, they're going to have to sign at least one midfielder in the summer. So to have Carney already at the club, bedded in with 10 months of football under Graham Potter under his belt, is like the perfect handover at that point, isn't it? If he can just be a starter next season in 60% of games, it's the right decision to sign him.
It's worth talking about his rise as well, because it has been truly insane.
Yeah. I mean, he's so highly rated at Villa.
I mean, he was at Northampton in 2020. I think it won Villa's Academy Player of the Year in his first year at Aston Villa.
2021. Yeah.
And is now at Chelsea. What a rapid rise to
but that's
Premier League
always the
fame.
sign of a player who's like really exceptional, who just suddenly goes up like 5 different tiers that you can tell is immediately going to be
and like you said, Barcelona and AC Milan both interested in signing him. And AC Milan, I mean, I know we've pounded Barcelona's recruitment strategy relentlessly over the last sort of 2 years, but AC Milan are smart operators now, aren't they? They can sniff out someone that's about to go.
Yeah,
pretty well.
He left Villa, but should we just touch upon Garnacho, who's still at Villa? Because, sensational. But is he going to play under Unai Emery?
I'm really annoyed that Cameron Archer is now on everyone's radar, because I thought when he was loaned out to Preston, I was like, and Celtic had this, like 18 months ago, had the strategy of recruiting from Premier League 2 sides. I was like, I quite fancy him at Celtic.
He's so highly rated by Villa, they wouldn't let him go, would they?
Probably not. But I don't know if this... At first, he went to like Solihull Moors in the Conference League, and that was 2 years ago. So, I mean, I don't know if they anticipated him taking this sort of quantum leap, but he was loaned to Preston North End from January onwards last season, and he became their second top goal scorer in the league, 8 goals and assists in around 18 starts, I think. And it was like 2.5 shots a game, 1 key pass, and that was just 6 months after finishing up a season at the 5th level of English, football. So the I don't know, his improvement was marked, and it was just really, really impressive. And the variety of his finishing is insane. That's what impresses me the most. He's not like putting up these numbers, scoring, you're not bundling the ball over the line. Yeah. They are all fucking welders.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how and if he plays under Unai, though, because I think Unai is going to have a very set vision of how this Villa side sets up. Wouldn't be a surprise to me to see Ings and Watkins play as a 2 as well up front this weekend against Manchester United. And, I did a stay or go on We Need to Talk a couple of weeks ago with the Aston Villa squad, and I was speaking to quite a few Villa fans about that. And there was a little bit of a mix of needs to be loaned out. Right. Needs to be loaned out and get some more game time. But then there were other people saying, let's see what Unai does with him. I think if he doesn't play significant minutes, if he's not going to play, significant minutes over the second half of the season, then they may as well load him out in January, because you just don't want to keep stunting his development by keeping him on the bench and not playing any minutes at all when you're Aston Villa.
I spoke to Ty, who was on Zach's show, Talking Point, and he was saying that he thinks that he might get time under Emery because Emery's going to demand more from the press, and that might mean using that 4th, 5th substitute a little bit more often in the sort of dying embers of games, maybe with Coutinho not able to do that over 90 minutes. So, yeah, we'll see. It might be that they have to weigh up the benefits of 6 more months in the Championship, or
and they've got
15 appearances off the bench in the Prem
already. They've already got Keenan Davis out on loan, haven't they? At Watford, scoring goals.
And also, Ings, Watkins, Bailey, these guys have all played in high pressing systems. Buendia played in a high pressing system. This is the disadvantage of not being in European football, because if you've got when, for example, Emery was coaching Arsenal, he used the Europa League as a way to blood these youngsters. Yeah. Whereas the domestic cups are not consistent enough in terms of game time to allow some of these players to get, say, 500, 800 minutes under their belt.
Yeah, take for like the League Cup that is being played on Thursday, right? Villa have got United at Old Trafford, so they could feasibly go out first round, effectively, of play in that game, and then there's no minutes for youngsters in League Cup situation.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So it's a difficult one. Let's go on to some of your guys' suggestions at home then, because Ham's put a tweet out. It kind of falls into two categories, doesn't it?
Yeah, because
these two the players they've suggested.
Yeah, exactly. People suggested sort of players that most football fans wouldn't have an idea of or know who they are, but haven't been tracking their progress. And then they also suggested people that are starting to get minutes now in the Premier League, like Cole Palmer, for example. So, I mean, I don't know who you want to start with here.
We may as well start with Bajcetic.
A lot of Liverpool fans want him in the team.
Yeah, I always am like slightly reticent when that happens. When like everybody's like, play this young lad when we're in crisis. I do feel like there is an element of, you can actually hinder a player's development by playing them when you're at your lowest point. I know that a lot of people are like, we're not doing well. Let the kids have a run out. I actually think you can really hinder players' development by doing that, because you can really knock a player's confidence if you just throw them into a underperforming team that they then don't perform in. It can actually set them back quite considerably. So I would be slightly
because when fans say that, they
in.
Don't mean give it, entrust those minutes with the kids and there be no consequences. What they mean is hopefully this saves us, or miraculously digs us out of a hole.
And 9 times out of 10 it doesn't.
Really
and what actually happens is the youngster gets pulled into the kind of, everybody's underperforming, he's not good enough, is he? And then after 3 or 4 games, everybody's going, he's not good enough. Well, you want, everybody's going, give it to the kids 3 weeks ago, and now you're writing off a potential young star talent. But it might not be the case with Bajcetic, because he is obviously quite highly talented, and Liverpool have semi-bedded.
No, they've been really guarded.
Recently.
They've been really guarded with the way that they've introduced him to the team. Like, he came on for half an hour or 20 minutes against Bournemouth when they were like 9-0 up or whatever. They obviously introduced him in that game against Ajax. Brought Thiago off, I think, because he can play centre-back or central midfield. So they brought him on in central midfield. Less of a gamble, I guess, although they were winning, 3-0? 3-1 or something? So, I actually think they've bettered him to start really carefully. I think he's their youngest ever Champions League debutant now, right? He was 17 at the time. Yeah. So clearly they rate him.
He's the guy
He's
all
got the
want to be
accolades
starting
already.
in centre mid for him. And it's like, the problems in your midfield is just so deep. Like, please don't just chuck this lad in.
It depends. Yeah, I agree with that. But don't just chuck him in for the sake of it. But it depends what his abilities are. So, for instance, I think something that's been missing from their midfield is a kind of water carrier who's just got the legs to get in the right position and do the pressing. That maybe Henderson and Milner.
Curtis Jones the other day on the left of that
and Curtis Jones, has been able to do that while slotting into a really high-level possession game. Well, if Bajcetic can do this, then it would be kind of interesting to have somebody there who can do some of the hard running, cover for Fabinho a little bit, because I still think the best midfield is going to be Fabinho, Thiago +1. Probably go for Curtis Jones over an untried kid, but if you want to try him out in the odd game, I think that this is not actually a bad situation to do it, so long as you have a plan for what he needs to do and what you expect to see from him in order to give him a shot in the first team next year.
It's a really difficult role, though, in that Liverpool side. Like, I think Curtis Jones, his progress has stagnated quite badly over the last couple of years, and that is not his fault. It's down to, brilliance of other players in there, brilliance of players like Jordan Henderson off the ball, but it's not an easy role to fill, that Liverpool midfield.
Sure.
They've tried a lot of combinations this season, and almost none of them have worked so far. So, I think just ease him in very, very
a volatile time to come in.
Yeah, totally agree. Got a couple of Arsenal suggestions here, Pat. Brook Norton-Coffey and Charlie Patino.
Yeah, Brook Norton-Coffey is a right back, or really a right wing back. I think he's on loan at, I want to say, Rotherham.
Yeah.
he's quite an interesting guy. You know, he's a kind of two-way player. If you look at his numbers, it's obviously hard to see exactly what's going on because wing backs play in all sorts of different ways. Yeah. So I think he's making quite a lot of tackles, but overall not a huge number of defensive actions. You'd hope to see an increase in his attacking numbers. But he's been really highly regarded for quite some time. And again, Arsenal going forward probably will be in need of a different sort of right back, because we're quite wedded at the moment to this right back that's really a centre back, right? You know, you've got Ben White playing it at the moment, though he's been getting forward, and you've got Tomiyasu. Yeah. What Arsenal don't have, or rather what they only have in the form of Cedric, is more of a conventional fullback who is going to bomb forward, or who could play, if you wanted to flex into a back three, play on the right of it. So he's an interesting option for Arsenal to have. We're a few years away from that because I think he's 18. Yeah. So you'd expect there to be some time there. But he's been on loan quite a bit. He's getting some minutes in the men's game. And he's highly regarded by everybody around. But Patino is the guy that everyone talks about. Patino's really young, and he is really slight. But it's interesting because he's been talked up as a possession player, you know, silky on the ball, has the ability to create from deep, great progressive passing. If you look at the season, his progressive passing is fine, but that's obviously quite good for a guy of his age.
He's playing for Blackpool.
Exactly. But what's really popped this season are his defensive numbers. You know, he's up between 4 and 5 tackles and interceptions a game last time I looked. That's pretty impressive stuff in a difficult division.
Yeah.
And
incredibly competitive this season, the Championship.
Sure, and it always is, really. And that's an interesting possibility for Arsenal going forward. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes on loan again next year, unless maybe we sell Sambi and bring in another. You know, it kind of depends what we do there. And he can't right now play the 6 role. Then again, neither really can Sambi, so I don't really know. But if you were to try and move towards a 4-3-3, which at times we've done this season, you know, Odegaard wants to drop a little bit deep. Sure, but Xhaka is also knocking on the door of 30, and he's had phenomenal fitness through his career, but that also means he's played a phenomenal number of minutes through his career. So it'd be interesting to try Patino out as more of a, I know this is a bit lazy, but the kind of Man City style interior. In an Arsenal 4-3-3. Whether that ends up happening with Fabio Vieira there as well, it's hard to say.
And he's still so young.
But he's promising, and we know Arteta regards him highly. And I think if there's one guy in the academy right now who Arsenal are going to try and find a way to push into the first team setup, it will be Patino.
They're really well-selected loans, let's say. And last time I had a look at sort of the formations Blackpool were using, he was playing on the left in a 4-3-3, or at times playing in the double pivot when they played 4-2-3-1. So that's pretty simpatico with the systems that Arsenal use, right? So, you know, hopefully that puts him in good stead. And Brook Norton-Cuffy, to graduate that seamlessly to Championship football after spending the season on loan at Lincoln, in League One, is really, really impressive. And when you go, that's the sort of thing where you look back at it in 5 years' time on Wikipedia, and it'll be like Lincoln, Rotherham, and then it would just be first team football, I think. Maybe you keep him around in the first team next season, 10 appearances in the Premier League, and hopefully it just takes off from there. Because
or a low-level Premier League, a top-level Championship League loan, a little bit like.
I would probably go for that. I do just think those minutes are really important, but I wouldn't be surprised, if I can't remember if Cedric's contract comes to an end at the end of the season, but obviously, you know, barely seen. It wouldn't surprise me if Arteta said, okay, we'll keep him about. But Arsenal have generally got smarter about managing their loans. You know, there was a key loan for Smith Rowe that made him ready for the first team, and we've seen this kind of happen time and time again. You know, Nketiah had a really formative loan at Leeds, especially. So
Balogun potentially is having one now.
Balogun is absolutely on fire at Reims. So I think. Patino.
3 different pronunciations of that.
Patino and Norton-Cuffy would be
one
interesting.
Correct one. So
let's do another suggestion then. Ben Doaks, little Celtic name in there, hamster.
Well, he's gone to Liverpool.
Gone, yeah.
600k.
That's a real pipeline right now. Liverpool are out in Scotland with a butterfly net.
So Bayern Munich, they've taken in the last few years 2 or 3 of our most promising youngsters. Celtic are getting pillaged at the moment, but I guess that you kind of have to take your medicine when you're doing it to the rest of Scottish football as well.
Sure.
So I'm not going to complain too much, but he looks like a bit of a game change is very strong, but I think he's going to be a special talent.
Okay.
He's already ripping up the UEFA Youth League.
Yeah.
And he was quartered very carefully and relentlessly by Liverpool.
Where does he play?
They got the man on the wing. For the most part, like he broke through into Celtic's side, made a couple of appearances for the senior team playing on the right hand side, but just bundles of energy, great close control. You can see why, almost like Luis Diaz kind of style, like has a penchant for the spectacular as well. Really fucking annoying.
Fair enough.
I expect to see him in Liverpool's first team in probably 18 months.
Another suggestion here from it's Timbo.
Not starting around the squad.
Rico Lewis, I think worth touching upon, given scored Champions League midweek, then at 17 from right back, and that's a pathway that actually is open at Manchester, a rare open pathway at Manchester City, given that they don't actually have a backup right back on the books. I suppose Joao Cancelo can play there, can't he? But he's been operating generally as a left back, and they've got Sergio Gomez as a left back. But behind Kyle Walker is kind of a vacant slot. Stones has played there at times this season. Kanji's played there at times this season. So if you are a youngster that's exceptional in the academy, right back's probably the opening, given Walker's age now. He's 31, I want to say, something like that. And clearly massively rated by Pep Guardiola. Some of the comments post that Champions League game were pretty exceptional. And to be even playing in City's first team, let alone the Champions League at 17, is, you've got to be pretty bloody talented. Crazy. So Rico Lewis, I think, is definitely one to keep your eye on. All right, let's do some quick fire questions then, shall we?
We've got the bigger names down there, but I guess we can just kind of skip them, can't we?
Yeah.
Cole Palmer, Jed Spence, Brian Hill.
Yeah.
Is there anything to be said about Jed Spence at Tottenham we've not already said?
Do we count him as like a wonder kid anymore, Jed Spence? I feel like he's been around the block.
He has,
I'm not
but
gonna lie.
I suppose still 21 and not breaking into the side. Like, how much longer can Emerson... can he not?
Emerson's going to play pretty much every game.
Indefinitely. The rumours are Jed Spence is going on loan.
I just don't think Emerson's going to be dropped by Conte for a prolonged period of time. He obviously offers things that we mere mortals, positionally and defensively, that tactically that Conte likes, that we don't, that Matt Doherty offers and Jed doesn't offer and Jed Spence doesn't offer. So I think Emerson Royale's here to stay, and I agree Jed Spence is going to be loaned out. He's just got no future under Conte there, clearly, because they've been a mess at right back at times and he hasn't even had a sniff.
Cole Palmer looks a player though.
Yes, he does. Let's get it right this
Let's
time.
move on.
Ethan Laird as well, potentially at Manchester United, given there's a right back vacancy behind Diego Dalot there.
Nah.
And he's been sensational.
But there's just not enough sauce in that name. You can't be a star with that name.
I think he's a pretty saucy player. He's playing really well at QPR.
It's like,
and he's developing on a
we can't live in a world where like the best players in the world are called like Ben Doaks.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, he could be the best player in the world, but he's going to have to change his name.
Let's do some quick fire questions. MFC4 says, who is a team that's not doing this well that you can see dramatically improving? Questionable English, but we kind of get what he's saying. Who's going to improve over the second half of the season? I think Aston Villa, most markedly, under Unai Emery. I think they're going to make really rapid improvements. So
you're a big Emery fan right now.
I'm not even a massive Emery fan, like classically.
No, but you're a fan of this move.
Yeah, massive fan. I think this is the best Aston Villa appointment since Martin O'Neill. I think this is...
No, you actually go through them. It's not
a huge statement, but
that might be true.
I think he's way above their calibre, I'll be honest with you. I think Villa, huge club historically, great fan base, massive stadium, great academy and everything, but have been like middling to poor over like recent memory for me. Unai Emery is taking teams like Villarreal to Champions League semi-finals as recently as 12 months ago. Like, this is a manager who can get Villa into the Europa League and could win it with them. That's not beyond
Yes! Europa League winners Villa, 2024.
They've got so much money at that club. That ownership group is going to put into that club.
This is one of those appointments where even if it goes wrong, I will say, you know what? They did it for the right reasons. It was still the right. He was still the right man at the right time, unlike Gerrard, which is coincidentally the excuse I use when I lose bets. Listen, Lauren, it was still a good bet.
What do we think about Julian Lopetegui going to Wolves? Because it looks like that's now happening.
What now? The kind of obviously had something with his father, right? Illness in the family. He's taken over in January.
I think it's definitely a delayed appointment, but it looks like it's going to be Lopetegui. Could he improve him?
Yeah,
I think they could be a good candidate for this group of players.
It's just suffering, just like watching Lopetegui ball is just like pure suffering.
Yeah, but that's Wolves.
They
can't score a goal, mate.
Yeah, but I feel like they've been trying to evolve beyond that with the squad. Some of the squad decisions they've made have not been sufferable signings. But I just think it's going to be dire.
Is it going to be? It's going to be better than 0.3 goals per game.
It's going to be exactly the same.
They can't they can't get any worse. I think they will improve under Lopetegui across the team. So they'd be my candidate.
I kind of disagree. I think he might surprise us.
Well, you think they might go down under Lopetegui?
No, as in I kind of disagree with Pat. I agree with you that I think Lopetegui might come in.
I think Wolves and Villa might
make them the 12th best team in England.
I'm not saying he won't make them good. I'm saying that they'll be boring. I think Lopetegui's a good coach.
But fans just enjoy winning, don't they? By any means.
They would have had Nuno back like that, mate, Wolves fans. Let's do another one of these quick fires. Major Crib says, which player will make a name for himself at this World Cup?
Oh, it's a great question. Maybe I should have had an answer for.
Maybe a James Rodriguez style player, that's going to have an actual breakout World Cup and then go for big bucks next summer.
Didn't Monaco buy James Rodriguez before that World Cup?
But it was still his formative, wasn't it? It was like his breakout
no, I know what you mean. I meant to prepare an answer for this because it's a good question, but I'm now struggling.
I think it might be Jamal Musiala, although he's kind of already broken out, hasn't he? He's kind of already on superstar track. Yeah. But I think he's going to be so big at this World Cup for Germany.
Which managers at this competition really place their faith in the youth? Luis Enrique with Spain has done it right. So we saw Pedri had that tournament at the Euros.
Unai Simon's not a bad shout in goal.
Unai Simon,
I think he could be in for a big old move next summer, given there's a lot of goalkeeping vacancies coming up. You think of Tottenham, Manchester United. He's been pretty sensational at Bilbao. They don't release for less than release clause. If he has a really good World Cup with Spain, which is very possible, he's going to be the starting goalkeeper, you'd think. He could be in for a big move.
That's a much more interesting answer than Gavi has just won the Copa trophy and the Golden Boy, which I was about to say.
What about in the French squad? Anybody in the French squad, given that Pogba and Kante both confirmed to be missing it now?
I mean, you'd expect it to be Chouameni and Camavinga or something like that in the middle there. I don't know if he'll play. I'd like to see him play. But I still feel like we're going to get Mbappe, Benzema, Griezmann.
What about the back? Varane? Is there a potential for Varane?
Well, Varane, you'd expect maybe Saliba or Koundé to come in.
Yeah.
So that could be quite interesting. Or Pavard could obviously go to centre-back. I don't know. There are a few kind of interesting guys. So, for example, I wouldn't be surprised if one of the US players really makes a name for themselves. I mean, obviously we know them, but they're not household names except in the US. And I would put the USA as favourites to get out of that group ahead of Wales, certainly.
Who are we talking? Carter Vickers?
No, I mean Aronson. Somebody like
Tyler
Aronson. Adams is back in form. Obviously, they've got tons of talent, man. They've got Pulisic, they've got Dest, they've got so many interesting players in that squad. And then I can't remember who's in Group H. That to me is kind of the group of death. It's Ghana, South Korea, maybe Uruguay.
I've got a feel for South Korea.
And Belgium. I also wouldn't be surprised to see somebody do well there, because that group, I think, you could almost see anything happening.
Yeah, I feel like a bit for South Korea, man.
Jonathan David
doesn't go.
Yeah, with his eye. I feel like Jonathan David could re-announce himself as someone that is ready to be a world-class number 9, because people... I mean, I don't think anyone, thought he would remain in France
for as long as he has,
or still be in France at this point. So yeah, that could be a shout. And
the striker market's thin. We've been talking about
Man.
You said earlier, Man United desperate for a striker, but you look around and you're like, where does that striker come from? I also wouldn't be surprised to see. Again, we know him and he's very well known in Italy, but I don't think the average Premier League fan knows much about Rafael Leao, for example. I wouldn't be surprised if Rafael Leao is Portugal's player of the tournament.
Yeah,
he's probably the best Portuguese player there is right now. Apart from maybe Cancelo.
Well, this is how João Felix gets his move. He has a good World Cup, and then someone comes in and pays for
the absence of
the money for him.
And poor form from Bruno and Ronaldo, who has for a while now been kind of a problem for that Portugal side, especially in combination with Bruno Fernandes. There is an opening.
Well, especially given the reports we saw yesterday in the Madrid press that Atletico Madrid are seriously cash-strapped now and didn't make the European competition.
Well, they've had to transfer those 4 players, right?
And
rumours are less.
João Felix is obviously on the chopping block, given he's not getting minutes and he's a sellable asset, and they haven't got enough cash flow coming into the club. I kind of agree. I think if João Felix has a really good World Cup, the January market with teams looking for a forward, maybe want to play João Felix through the middle as a slightly more reserved option who can drift off left, then he becomes a very good option as well.
And on the theme of Portugal, I know you boys sort of roll your eyes sometimes when I mention the Celtic players, but Felipe Jota has been included. He's been included in the provisional squad.
55.
And I mean, he's had to bless him, he's been injured and had to sit out a few Champions League games, and we've looked a totally inferior proposition without him. And he came on against Real Madrid the other day, and he had 3 shots on target. He scored through like 20 minutes. He scored a goal. He completed a dribble. He won a bunch of ground duels. He is probably only going to be at Celtic for another 18 months. But what a player as well.
Yeah. And no Neto. Neto's not going to go. Jota out injured.
I really like the Rafael shot.
Again, there's a vacancy, but you still look at Portugal and you think it's probably going to be Bernardo Silva, Ronaldo,
surely
Leao,
shots though, yeah.
Fernandes, maybe Felish. It's hard to get
the depth is insane.
I think Leao's contract's up in 2024 as well.
Interesting.
And he hasn't signed a new deal yet because that collapsed those negotiations. So I think come the summer he'll only have a year left. So it's kind of time to shit or get off the pot if you're AC Milan with Rafael Leao.
He's a legit superstar.
And Chelsea are probably they're going to be willing to foot the bill in terms of the money he owes Sporting CP as well, right? That'll probably be the main reason that Leao goes to a different club, to a super club, because they will pick up
the tab.
Yeah.
N'Golo says, which player has something to prove at this World Cup? Harry Maguire?
Yeah.
I think it's an obvious, but I think it's the biggest answer. If Harry Maguire goes there and has a stunningly good World Cup and comes out in the team of the tournament, England go deep with a good defensive record as they have in the last 2 tournaments, it proves a lot of people wrong, given, he's currently Manchester United's 4th choice centre-back. Sociedad midweek, without Rafa Varane, United opted for Lindelof and Martinez.
I think that makes sense, though.
So I think Maguire, for me, has an awful lot to prove at this tournament.
But in a way, I don't think it actually necessarily answers his critics. If he has a good tournament.
He doesn't. He's playing a 3.
He's playing in a 3. But I think he definitely should play for England because he's such a weapon on set pieces. He's such an important player in multiple ways. And I do think his weaknesses are covered for by playing in a back 3. But yeah, it would be a really good time for him to do it. And actually Sterling as well. Sterling often saves his best football for England. Hasn't had an amazing season so far, though. I think the criticism is massively overblown.
Yeah. Big time.
It'd be interesting to see something like that. And actually, you know what? Danilo as well, who I think is going to start for Brazil as right back, has been great for Juventus this season in a ramshackle squad, but is not highly rated in the Prem because of that pretty poor spell with City. I could see Danilo showing that he's actually a very, very good fullback, and I think he'll want to.
I think there's some players in that Brazil squad. I think Fred is the same. I think a lot of Premier League fans legitimately think he's useless, Fred. Yeah, and for Brazil, he is obviously a vital component of the Chiche's side. Yeah.
Because they've got Casemiro.
I think
really likes him, doesn't he?
Casemiro and Fred will definitely be the midfield.
And he plays him a little bit further forward as well. Yeah. And a lot of Brazilians give
I think it will definitely be Fred, Paqueta, and Casemiro.
Solskjaer and Ten Hag have got it in the ear from Brazilians, haven't they, for not playing Fred a little bit further forward, because that's where he has been good for his national team. I think on that same subject, Morata, he flirted with sort of proving the doubters wrong at the Euros, didn't he? Almost got going. But if he has a really good tournament, I think that could help push his status up to the level it probably deserves to be at. I think there's a bit of a misconception about him that he's a flop as well, that he's a bit of a donkey when his numbers are generally very good under the hood. And
he's a meme, isn't he? He's got the meme characteristics, unfortunately.
At the top end of the scale, obviously we've spoken about how Messi's legacy as the greatest footballer ever can be consolidated with a World Cup win, but Neymar's as well. If Brazil are favourites, if Neymar delivers the World Cup, I think that'll send him from being like this, world-class player, sort of best of his generation status to an all-timer.
Yeah, I think if Messi only plays one of the last 2 PSG games before the World Cup, his 1,000th game of football will be the World Cup final, if they were to get that. So I'm really hopeful that he only plays one of the last 2 games for PSG this
That's class.
Pre-World Cup thing. Let's finish with a personal question then. Most nostalgic Christmas activity? Or first concert and best concert?
You're quite a wintry bloke.
Most nostalgic Christmas
What does that
activity?
mean?
What, as in the one that awakens most nostalgia? Because I don't. There are things that I remember doing at Christmas in the past, but I don't do them at Christmas now.
I'll tell you what, the Harry Potter theme tune at Christmas gets me feeling festive, gets me feeling wintry.
I guess people are saying the John Lewis advert and stuff, aren't they, for this?
Yeah, bit of mulled wine. I mean, does that make me feel nostalgic? No.
That's drinking mulled wine is an activity. Watching the John Lewis advert is not really. When I was a kid,
can it be classed?
When I was a kid, I remember the ice rink was like free entry on Christmas afternoon, so everybody would go ice skating. But I haven't been ice skating since I was at uni.
Really? Me and Chloe go every year at Christmas.
Every year?
At least like 2 or 3 times. Go to each of the ice rinks around London.
Arguing on Christmas Day. That's nostalgic for me.
Arguing?
It's what my family used to love doing.
Oh, really?
My dad's headed off down the pub at 11, not helping out with the Christmas
That's
dinner. My mum was like, get your dad home.
That's an emotional answer, that, from Hamill. Arguing.
Makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside.
Yeah, that's a really honest one.
The ice rink's good, though. All right, that's it for another episode of Sunday Vibes. If you did enjoy this video, please do hit the like button. Make sure you go and respond to Hamster's tweet when he puts it out asking for responses about Sunday Vibes. Anything to plug?
Yeah, we've got Team Talk. That would have come out midweek.
That was maybe the best episode we've ever done, in my opinion.
The most contentious, definitely most fractious. Some of the content not high quality, but it was explosive.
It's so argumentative.
Yeah, really argumentative.
All right, there we go. Thanks so much for watching. See you later.
Goodbye.